We all know how it goes. One day we're born, one day we die. Everything that happens in between, we experience, catalog, and attempt to understand. But the infinite stretches of time, before our birth and after our death, remain a profound, impenetrable mystery. This fundamental ignorance of our origin and destination makes any definitive statement about the meaning or purpose of our existence an exercise in speculation. If we cannot know from whence we came, how can we truly know why we are here? If we do not know where we are going, how can any of our present actions be judged to have ultimate significance? This deep-seated uncertainty has allowed the question, what is the meaning of life, to plague humanity since the dawn of consciousness. While a definitive, objective answer remains elusive, we have constructed elaborate systems of belief to quell the existential anxiety this question provokes. Religions offer a divine purpose, positing a creator who has set the stage and will judge our performance for an eternal reward or punishment. Secular humanism finds meaning in the love we share, the communities we build, and the progress of our species. Others find solace in the sheer, improbable fact of life itself. But for the nihilist, all of these are merely comforting illusions. For the nihilist, life, in its totality, is meaningless. All action, suffering, love, and hatred are ultimately senseless, a flicker of activity in a cold, indifferent universe. This is nihilism, the belief in nothing. At some point, many of us have brushed against the cold edge of nihilistic thought. It often appears as a pervasive sense of purposelessness, a feeling that our lives lack intrinsic value. This is a common rite of passage during the transition from received beliefs to chosen ones. That critical period of questioning parental values, absorbing new knowledge, and forging an independent worldview. This entire unraveling process often begins with a single, devastatingly simple question: why? This three-letter word is a philosophical wrecking ball, capable of demolishing the most stable foundations of our beliefs. Ask it persistently about any core value you hold. Why do you believe those things? Where did that belief come from? Who gave it to you? And what were their reasons? Keep pulling at the thread, and you will eventually reach a point of infinite regress, an abyss where reasons run out. You will arrive at nothing. Despite all our religions, philosophies, and scientific discoveries, the final why remains unanswered. The nihilist looks into this abyss and concludes that there is no answer, because there is no question. There is no ultimate why. There is simply nothing. As the philosopher Alan Watts bleakly put it, life is nothing more than a trip from the maternity ward to the crematorium. The term nihilism itself originates from the Latin word nihili, meaning nothing. It is the ideology of nothing. However, this simple definition belies its complexity, and it's often confused with related but distinct worldviews. Pessimism, most famously articulated by Arthur Schopenhauer, sees the world as a place of endless, irrational striving and suffering. A pessimist believes that good and evil exist, but that evil and pain will inevitably prevail. A nihilist, by contrast, rejects the very categories of good and evil as human constructs with no objective reality. Cynicism, tracing its roots to the ancient Greek philosopher Diogenes, is a deep-seated distrust of human motives. The cynic believes everyone acts out of pure self-interest. This implies a standard of good that humans consistently fail to meet. The nihilist argues that no such standard exists in the first place. Apathy is an emotional state of indifference. An apathetic person may well believe life has meaning, but they simply lack the energy or interest to care about it. Nihilism is not an emotional state, but a philosophical conclusion that there is no grand design or purpose to find or care about. This leads to the central paradox of nihilism. If you truly believe in nothing, then that nothing becomes the object of your belief, a something. The very act of asserting nihilism as a truth contradicts its core tenet that no truths exist. Historically, nihilism first gained prominence not as a formal philosophy, but as a literary and political movement in 19th century Russia. Ivan Turgenev's 1862 novel, Fathers and Sons, introduced the character of Bazarov, an archetypal nihilist who rejected all traditional authority, morality, and social conventions. This literary idea was quickly adopted by radical political movements that argued for the complete destruction of the existing social, political, and religious order as a necessary precondition for building a new, better world. Over time, these ideas were categorized into different forms of nihilism. Political nihilism, the belief that all existing political and social structures are corrupt and must be completely annihilated to pave the way for progress. Ethical, or moral, nihilism, the rejection of all moral and ethical values. It posits that nothing is inherently right or wrong. These are merely social conventions. One modern variant, error theory, argues that all moral statements are fundamentally false because there are no moral facts in the universe for them to correspond to. Existential nihilism, the most widely understood form, this is the conviction that life has no intrinsic meaning, purpose, or value. The implications of this worldview are terrifying. If life is meaningless, then every human achievement, the pyramids of Giza, the voyages to the moon, the fight for human rights, is ultimately a waste, a blip in time with no lasting consequence. The Austrian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust, observed that the greatest psychological toll on his fellow prisoners was not the physical suffering, but the descent into meaninglessness. His entire school of psychotherapy, logotherapy, is based on the idea that the primary driving force in humans is the pursuit of meaning. Statistics from numerous sociological studies in the West reflect a growing crisis of meaning, with declining trust in traditional institutions like government and religion, and rising rates of reported loneliness and purposelessness, particularly among younger generations. No philosopher is more associated with nihilism than Friedrich Nietzsche, yet his relationship with it was complex. He was both its greatest diagnostician and its most ardent opponent. Nietzsche famously declared that God is dead. He did not mean this literally. He meant that the Christian moral framework, which had served as the foundation of Western civilization for centuries, had lost its credibility and power. This collapse, he predicted, would usher in an age of profound nihilism, a quote, catastrophe waiting to implode. Nietzsche feared a world where, without a basis for objective morality, anything becomes permissible. How can we condemn slavery or genocide as objectively evil if evil is just a word? At a gut level, we feel these things are wrong, but the nihilist points out that we cannot logically prove it. This was Nietzsche's terror. Yet he also saw nihilism as a necessary, transitional phase. He believed that by confronting the abyss of meaninglessness, humanity could overcome it. His solution was the Übermensch, overman, a new kind of human who creates their own values and imposes their own meaning onto a meaningless world. For Nietzsche, tearing down the old, decayed house of morality was not an end in itself, but an opportunity to, quote, build a bigger and better home. Today, we can see signs of Nietzsche's prophecy unfolding. On social media and in public discourse, long-standing cultural norms are being dismantled. The very idea of objective truth is under assault. Any belief, no matter how fringe, can find a community to defend its, quote, right to exist. The question is no longer whether something is right or wrong, but why can't I? A question to which society no longer has a confident answer. As William Shakespeare wrote in Macbeth, life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Faced with this seemingly bleak reality, what is our response? Perhaps it is not to despair. Perhaps, as the existentialist Albert Camus suggested, it is to embrace the absurd, to recognize the lack of inherent meaning but to rebel against it by living with passion, freedom, and defiance. Instead of seeing the glass as half full or half empty, we can throw it away and, with joyous rebellion, drink directly from the source,